Paradrama Tales. My sister was 19. She locked herself in the guest room. When I got home, she said, I saw him, completely naked. The pool, the hallway, the kitchen. And he smiled, like it was normal. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't just dating the wrong man. I had let him near the wrong person. You don't invite someone to live with you unless you trust them. Not just to pay their share or wash the dishes, but to exist beside the people you love most. To walk the same halls as your family. To be present and respectful and aware. When my boyfriend moved in, it wasn't some casual step. It was a marker. I'd never let anyone share my home like that before. And once you live together, it becomes less about romance and more about rhythm. Chores, coffee mugs, bathroom schedules, the quiet, practical side of building something real. So when my younger sister asked to stay over for a few days, I didn't think twice. She's 19, starting community college, going through one of those awkward phases where adulthood feels too big and childhood feels too small. I offered her the guest room, showed her where the snacks were, told her to treat this place like home. And she did. We'd all watch TV together that first night. She and my boyfriend even joked about the movie he picked being peak dad energy. There was laughter, there was comfort, and there was no tension. Or at least, I thought there wasn't. Because when trust lives under one roof, you forget to question it. You assume people know where the invisible lines are, what is okay, and what absolutely is not. You assume that your boyfriend, a 31-year-old man, knows better than to walk naked through the house, especially with a 19-year-old girl present. You assume that the word respect doesn't need to be printed out and taped to the fridge. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe we assume too much. Because what happened that day wasn't an accident. It wasn't clumsiness. It wasn't some heat-of-the-moment lapse in judgment. It was a choice. And it happened in my house, right outside her door. That's what I kept circling back to. Not just the nudity, but the comfort, the casualness, the audacity, to be so unbothered by her presence, to walk past her like she didn't matter, like her discomfort was a price he could afford. He was naked, but it wasn't just about what he wasn't wearing. It was about what he exposed, about himself. When I got home, the house felt off. It was quiet. Not peaceful, but quiet. Like something had happened, and the air hadn't settled yet. I called out for my sister, and she didn't answer right away. That wasn't like her. She's usually the kind to meet me at the door, or at least shout, "In the guest room." This time, nothing. So I walked down the hall, and when I got to her door, I saw it, locked. Not just shut, locked. I knocked softly and asked if she was okay. A pause. Then, I need to tell you something. I sat down on the other side of the door and listened. She told me she'd seen him. Everything. At first through the window, swimming in the backyard pool, naked. No swimsuit, no towel nearby. Just him floating like the place was empty. She didn't want to believe it meant anything. She told herself maybe it was a stupid joke. Maybe he thought no one was home. She stayed quiet, confused, maybe even a little embarrassed for him. But then, she went to the kitchen. She said she was pouring water when he walked in. Still naked. Completely. Just said, "Hey," like it was the most normal thing in the world. She froze. He didn't rush out. He didn't cover up. He waved, then walked right past her, like she was invisible or like she didn't matter, and headed to the bedroom to grab clothes. She stood there, stunned, still holding the glass. And then, instead of going straight to the bathroom, he walked through the hallway again, naked, toward the shower, long shower. By then, she was already back in her room, locking the door, calling no one, telling no one, just locking the door, like it was her only line of defense. I wanted to cry and scream and undo the entire day, but all I could say was, "I'm so sorry." Because even though he was the one who crossed the line, She was the one left managing the shame. She didn't scream. She didn't tell him off. She didn't even call me. She went silent. She locked herself in. She waited for safety. And that's what made me furious. Not just what he did, but what she felt she had to do. To be safe in a home that should have never asked her to question it. When I finally confronted him, I was shaking. But not from fear. It was that quiet, cold kind of fury. The kind that comes when you realize someone has made your home unsafe and then acts like you're the one being dramatic for noticing. I told him what my sister said, word for word. The backyard, the kitchen, the hallway, her silence, her locked door. He didn't deny it. Didn't even try to spin it into something more innocent. Instead, he shrugged and said, "It was hot out." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "It was just skinny dipping. I felt like it." "I live here too," he said, like I had accused him of misplacing the remote, not of walking naked through a house where a teenage girl was staying. That's when it hit me. He really didn't get it. Or worse, he did and just didn't care. He kept going. "It's not like I meant for her to see anything. I was just being comfortable. It's not a big deal. She's an adult." I felt something snap. I said, "You were naked in front of my 19-year-old sister, in my kitchen. You waved. You walked past her twice. What part of that is not a big deal to you?" He scoffed and said I was overreacting, that I was blowing it out of proportion. I asked him why he didn't apologize, why he didn't come to me when it happened. He just looked at me like I was the unreasonable one. That's when I told him to get out. Not later. Not after a talk. Right then. And do you know what he did? He laughed. Like it was cute that I was mad. Like my sister's fear and my outrage were just inconveniences to his afternoon swim. He didn't pack. He didn't move. He just stood there and said, "You're seriously kicking me out over this?" I told him I'd call my sister's boyfriend, and we'd see what he thought. That got him moving. But even as he left, even as I slammed the door behind him, I realized something even more disturbing than what he'd done. He didn't think he was wrong. Not for being naked. Not for being seen. Not for making a young woman so uncomfortable she had to lock herself away. His only regret was getting caught. And that told me everything I needed to know. Some people think you need evidence, a screenshot, a video, a witness with a timestamp, but I didn't need any of that. I had my sister's voice. I had her locked door. I had the look in her eyes when she told me what happened. Half guilt, half fear, like maybe she was the one who did something wrong by existing in his line of sight. And I had his face. The way he didn't even try to act surprised. The way he explained it like it was weather. It was hot. As if the temperature gave him permission to strip away not just his clothes, but every shred of respect I thought he had. That was enough. I didn't need to call a meeting. Didn't need to process it over a glass of wine or sit on the couch hoping he'd say something magical to make it all make sense. Because some lines don't need discussion. They just need a door and someone to walk through it. So when he tried to act like I was being rash, I didn't flinch. I told him to leave. And when he stalled, when he stood in my doorway with that smug half-smile, still thinking he had leverage, still thinking this was something I'd get over, I raised my voice. I told him I'd call my sister's boyfriend and I'd tell him everything. And that changed his posture real fast. He left, and the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like my walls were still holding on to his presence. But I didn't regret it. Because in that moment, I didn't care if anyone believed me. Didn't care if he had another version. Didn't care if someone, somewhere said, maybe it was just a misunderstanding. I believed my sister. I believed in my gut. And I believed that a man who can walk through a house naked in front of a 19-year-old and not immediately feel ashamed doesn't belong in any house I live in. I didn't need proof. I needed her to feel safe again. And for that to happen, he had to go. After he left, the house was quiet, but not healed. I found my sister still in the guest room, sitting on the bed like she hadn't moved since I first walked through the door. She looked up at me, eyes puffy, shoulders tight, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I told her he was gone, that he wouldn't be coming back, that she was safe now. She didn't say much, just nodded, pulled her knees into her chest, and let out this breath she must have been holding since the moment it happened. But what stayed with me, what still claws at the back of my mind, is that he never said anything to her. Not a word. No apology. No, I didn't mean to scare you. No, I'm sorry for making you feel unsafe. Not even a coward's version of it. Nothing. He walked out of this house, knowing what he did, knowing how she felt, and chose silence. Chose to protect his pride instead of her dignity. Chose to defend himself to me instead of comforting the girl he violated with his carelessness. And yes, I use that word deliberately, violated, because even without touching her, he did something that invaded her space, her peace, and her ability to feel secure in a place that was supposed to be a safe haven. She didn't need much. She didn't ask for a confrontation or a spectacle. She didn't want drama. All she needed was one sentence. I'm sorry, that shouldn't have happened. But that never came, because he was too busy convincing himself he did nothing wrong, and that to me is worse than the act itself, because mistakes happen. Stupid decisions, bad judgment calls. But when someone won't acknowledge harm, when they dig in and make you feel like the problem, that's not just immaturity. That's character. He had 100 chances to look her in the eye and say, "You didn't deserve that." He didn't take a single one. So instead, I did the only thing left. I sat next to her. I took her hand. And I said the words he never did. I'm so sorry he did that. I believe you. And it wasn't okay. Because when someone breaks a boundary, silence only makes it deeper. But when someone names what happened, healing finally has somewhere to begin. After everything settled, after he left and the silence stopped ringing, I sat down with my sister, not as someone who had the answers, but as someone who could finally ask the right question. Why didn't you call me sooner? She hesitated. Then, in that small voice I'll never forget, she said, I didn't want to make a big deal. There it was. Not fear of me.
Not uncertainty about what she saw, but fear of being the problem. And I hated how familiar that sounded, because we teach girls, in ways big and small, that the safest choice is silence, that it's better to stay quiet than to make things awkward, better to feel uncomfortable than be called dramatic, better to lock your door than ask for help. And in that moment, I promised myself she'd never have to second-guess that again. So, I said it straight. Next time, you tell me. The second it feels off, you tell me, or your boyfriend or someone. You don't carry that alone. She nodded, but I could still see the worry behind her eyes. Like maybe I was just saying that because I was angry. So I didn't stop there. I called her boyfriend. I told him what happened. And before I could even finish the story, his voice went cold. He didn't ask why my ex did it. He didn't ask if my sister had misunderstood. He just said, "Tell me where he is." I told him he didn't need to do anything, that the guy was gone and he'd stay gone. But I needed her to hear that. I needed her to know that people would stand up for her, loudly, publicly, without hesitation. Because this is how you protect girls. You believe them the first time. You don't make them prove their discomfort. You don't ask what they were wearing or where they were standing. You don't minimize the moment just because it didn't turn violent. You say, that wasn't okay. And then you make sure it never happens again. She's not someone who needs saving, but she deserves safety. And if the people around her aren't building that for her, then they're part of the danger. I didn't plan on telling anyone outside my family. At first I thought maybe it was enough that he was gone. Maybe silence would give my sister space to breathe. Maybe people didn't need to know. But then I remembered, silence is how people like him move from one living room to another. one social circle to another, with no warning signs and no consequences. So I told one friend, one person who knew him, someone who had seen us together at game nights, double dates, barbecues. I didn't say it with venom. I didn't spin it with exaggeration. I just said the truth. He walked through my house naked while my teenage sister was staying over. She saw him. He didn't care. He never apologized. He acted like I overreacted. My friend went quiet, then said, "Jesus." That's all it took. Because when the story's real, when it lands in someone's gut like a brick, it doesn't need drama. The weight of the truth does all the work. Within 2 days, I started getting messages. "Hey, I heard what happened. I always felt something off about him. That's disgusting. I'm so sorry you went through that." Then silence from his side of the friend group, and slowly, word spread. People pulled back, not because I told them to, not because I called for a boycott, but because when they saw the truth for what it was, they couldn't unsee it. He called me, of course, multiple times, voicemails, long texts. At first it was panic, then anger, then guilt-tripping. One said, "You're ruining my life over nothing." Another, "I said I'd apologize. What more do you want?" I didn't respond, because it wasn't me ruining his life. It was him, walking naked through a house where a young woman was staying. It was him, refusing to see what he'd done wrong. It was him, choosing ego over accountability. And now he has to live with something he never expected. People seeing him without the charm, the jokes, the smile, and just seeing what he really did. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. Because when someone crosses a line that clear, they don't deserve the benefit of a community's doubt. They deserve distance. They deserve consequence. And sometimes, when one person finally speaks, others find their courage too. People keep saying, "He was just naked. It's not like he touched her." And every time I hear that, I want to ask, since when did we start measuring harm by skin-to-skin contact only? Because nakedness isn't just physical. It's not just about what's seen. It's about what's revealed. When he stood there, completely unclothed, and waved at my sister, he wasn't just exposed in body. He was exposed in character. I saw the real him that day. Not the man who made me coffee in the mornings. Not the one who charmed my friends. Not the guy who helped pick out couch pillows or kiss my forehead on the way to work. No, I saw the version of him that didn't see a scared 19-year-old girl. He saw an inconvenience, a pair of eyes that ruined his comfort, a presence he didn't even pause for. And maybe that's the part people don't understand. It wasn't just about nudity. It was about what it revealed he was comfortable doing, how comfortable he was being seen that way, how little effort he made to shield her, how quickly he turned it around on us, as if we were the ones being too sensitive. That's the kind of nakedness I'm talking about. The kind that shows up when people drop their performance and forget they're being watched. The kind that doesn't flinch when they make someone else feel small or unsafe. He thought the only thing exposed that day was his body. But what really got exposed was this: his entitlement, his lack of boundaries, his belief that other people's comfort ends where his freedom begins. That's the kind of naked that lingers longer than a glimpse in the hallway. The kind that can't be covered by clothes or a last-minute apology. So, no, I'm not haunted by what my sister saw. I'm haunted by what he didn't see. He didn't see the fear in her face. He didn't see the line he crossed. He didn't see the human being in front of him, only his own right to move freely. That's what makes this unforgettable, not the moment itself, but the moment I realized some men don't need to take off their clothes to show you exactly who they are. They just need to think no one's watching. This wasn't the kind of heartbreak you cry about on the bathroom floor. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was quiet, slow, real. Because sometimes the worst betrayals aren't the ones that break your heart. They're the ones that break your sense of safety. He didn't scream. He didn't slam doors. He didn't raise a hand. He just walked naked through a house where a young girl was staying and didn't care who saw him. And in that moment, I realized the kind of man I was living with. Not someone who made a mistake, but someone who believed my home was his stage, and everyone else, including my sister, was just background noise to his comfort. It would have been so easy to downplay it, to protect him, to tell my sister he didn't mean anything. But I didn't. Because I will never teach a girl, especially not my girl, that her discomfort is worth less than a man's ego. So here's what I want to say. To every woman who's ever second-guessed herself, to every girl who's locked a door and said nothing, you are not overreacting. You are not dramatic. You are not making it up. You are noticing something that's wrong, and your instincts are a form of truth. If someone makes you feel unsafe in a space, you should feel safe. You do not owe them silence. You owe yourself protection. So, if this story sat heavy on your chest, if it reminded you of a moment when you felt something wasn't right but didn't say anything, drop a comment, share what you wish someone had told you back then, and subscribe, because we don't just tell stories here, we protect each other with them. Because in a world that keeps asking women to be quiet, sometimes telling the story is the loudest, bravest thing we can do.